Hello and welcome to Drive Core. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different than my norm. And that's right, I may come off a little crazy to some, and let me assure you, I truly am. And that's because on either side of me here, I have two Audis. Yes, two Audi A4s, and they're both mine. Now, this one on my left here, you might know from some of my videos if you actually watch them. Now, I know most of you haven't, but if you did, you'll know this one here. That's my 2007 Audi A4 Avant, which I bought about a year ago and had to replace the engine in it. Ugh. And then this one here on my right is a 2015 Audi A4 Allroad, which I bought about now almost 7 months ago. And I've had enough experience with Audis to maybe justify getting these vehicles. Now, this is by no flex the fact that I have two of these depreciating assets, but they are nonetheless pretty good. Now, in today's video, I want to go over all the things Audi and with owning these two vehicles. That means purchase price, costs, and of course, maintenance, everyone's favorite. And not to mention just the overall ownership experience and what it's been like owning these two vehicles. So let's get to it. I'm going to start off with going over the story here of this car and why I have it. So about a year ago, I bought this 2007 Audi A4 Avant for about $1,000. And I know that seems like a steal, but believe me, I was getting into more than I could probably chew, and meaning that this vehicle probably should have just honestly gone to the scrapyard. But me being myself and deciding to save every vehicle on this planet, no matter the cost, I decided to invest the money, meaning I've put in quite a bit of work to this vehicle. And honestly, I think it's worth it. It's definitely been a very good vehicle to me so far. Obviously, it's still not perfect cosmetically. You can probably point out a million things with the cosmetics on it, and that's fine. But it's still a work in progress, and by no means probably ever going to be finished. But nonetheless, I really like this vehicle. So I bought this vehicle because many years back in like 2014, so about 10 years ago now, I actually bought my first B7 Audi A4, which just happens to be the same platform and also the same color as this one standing here in front of me. And having those great memories of that car, and you know, despite the fact that it was almost a maintenance nightmare in some ways in terms of cost, because I couldn't turn a wrench to save my life back then, it was time for it to go. And then you fast forward about 10 years now, I've finished college, I've worked hard. I thought to myself, you know what, I would love to have another one of these one day. And it just happens to be the day that I look on Marketplace, I see one of these listed for $2,500. I go and check it out right away after work, and well, it was in worse shape than you see it here today, but it was definitely pretty bad. But I figured it deserved a second chance at life. So here it is now standing here in front of me today, and by golly, I can't get enough of this car. It brings back sort of a nostalgic feeling, but also the feeling of hard work. And I don't just mean making money and buying this car, I mean actually putting in some hard work to make this car what it is today. In terms of cost, I've spent $1,000 on just getting the vehicle itself. And then over the last year, at least to this date, I've spent about $9,000 on maintenance alone. Now, I know that sounds outrageous because this vehicle is definitely not even worth that. And I understand that's just the worst financial decision ever made. And if I was my own financial advisor, I'd probably fire myself. But nonetheless, I decided that it was well worth it. And I still stand by that choice. Now, that $9,000, you're probably wondering, well, where did all that go? Well, there's about $3,600 in the engine, and then there's a bunch of preventative maintenance items to go along with it, that including new fluids, new brakes, and a bunch of trim pieces, and then a bunch of other odds and ends. Now, that still sounds like an awful lot of money, and believe me, I probably wouldn't have invested that much knowing how much it would have cost to get it where it is today. Now, is it worth it? Yes. I love this vehicle. I think it's very good. Is it perfect? Definitely not. But I am happy with what I've done with it and bringing it back to life to its current state. Now onto the 2015 Audi A4 Allroad, which I bought about 7 months ago now. And the reason why I bought it, I'm actually not quite sure, because I, at the time, was driving a 2005 Acura EL, and if you watch the review on the vehicle, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this vehicle in particular, although I didn't really need another wagon, I had the B7 and, you know, all was good. I had two cars. I mean, not, again, to brag, and some people don't even have a car, but I don't know why. I think it's just because I was a bit bored, and I didn't really care for the EL anymore. I mean, it was kind of falling apart. I mean, not so much mechanically, but just the bodywork wasn't perfect, and I didn't really want to spend any money because the car I practically bought for nothing. And well, I guess I just kind of made a dumb decision and I bought this. Now, this is not a bad car by any means. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I made a dumb decision financially and impulse buyed this car. And now the story behind me buying this car was is because I was actually looking at Audi S4s, and I looked actually across Canada. I really wanted a manual S4 in the same generation, the B8, B8.5. And although really hard to find, I did find one over in Montreal, but the deal didn't quite work out because they wanted way too much money for what it was. So I was kind of, well, torn. So I decided to keep looking, and all of a sudden I just stumbled upon an Allroad over in Vancouver. And I thought to myself, that's a kind of cool car. I mean, it's basically like my Avant, but this would be a little bit more economical on gas, not a V6. This is a 2-liter 4-cylinder. So I decided, you know what, let's just go for it. So I called the dealership, and then the next day I went over to the mainland, Vancouver, and during the pouring rainstorm of the century, I guess, and I bought it. Again, if I was a financial advisor, I would be kicking myself right now. So I bought this for $15,000. I mean, again, that's not bad. Now, in terms of maintenance, there's no exception to maintenance on any car, especially an Audi. You do have to keep up with not only your regular oil changes and service intervals, but this one was no exception either. Right off the bat, when I bought this car, I knew of some flaws, not so much mechanically, but just some trim pieces and things like that needed to be fixed. Like the glass on the passenger mirror wouldn't heat anymore, like it wouldn't defrost. And then, of course, there was a broken speaker grill in the back seat for some reason. But again, simple things, but also need to be fixed because I can't leave those little things alone. They'll eat me alive. So with those minor trim pieces being fixed and all that stuff and costing a little bit of money, that was no problem. That was probably about maybe a few $100s or less. That was all good. But then later on came some other stuff that I knew I'd have to address eventually. I can't just ignore them forever. And that is the fact that, yes, just like my B7A4, this one also has a timing chain. Now, this one, in terms of timing chain, this being a 4-cylinder, is actually located at the front of the engine and not at the rear. So I was sure to monitor the stretch via OBD11 scan tool and see how much stretch there was. And at that time it was over 4, which I believe the limit is 5, and that's when it can become almost like a grenade until it blows up around 8 or something like that. That was kind of concerning, so I figured, okay, well, I'm gonna have to address that soon rather than later, because I don't want basically another blown engine again, because that's really expensive. So I decided about a few months ago that I'm gonna do the timing chains and guides, tensioners. So I did all that, and no, I didn't film it because there are hundreds, if not probably thousands of videos of people doing it, and I figured, well, what's another guy gonna do if he just makes a video about that? You'll probably fall asleep. So I decided just to do that off camera and just do it when I had some time during my weekends. And then so I did the timing chain on the vehicle, so all was good. And then obviously I did some fluids like the coolant flush, because that was pretty bad. It looks like it had never been done. I did the brake fluid as well. I've done brake fluid on both cars now. And then not to mention, I also experienced a really common problem with this vehicle. One day while driving home from work, which is about 50 kilometers, the car had given me a warning light saying that you're low on coolant. And I figured, well, that's weird. I mean, I know I just redid all the cooling system, everything was fine. I even replaced the reservoir in one of the fittings and everything was good. No leaks, it held pressure. And then I realized, well, what's going on here? So yes, there was in fact a coolant leak. And well, I later figured out what exactly it was. So the plastic housing on the water pump had basically broken free and leaked out the seal. And well, although a slight inconvenience, not really, because it's pretty easy to replace, I invested a little bit of money into that, being about maybe $300-ish, and replaced that with an upgraded aluminum water pump. And that's been about it for maintenance. I mean, this vehicle, obviously being slightly newer and lower kilometers, being about 188,000 kilometers as of today, it's been pretty generous so far. I know that there's going to be more coming down the pipeline sort of thing, but there definitely hasn't been anything that I can't handle. And especially with me doing a bunch of preventative maintenance, which I've also forgot to mention, I did do a carbon cleaning and also replaced a bunch of gaskets and seals, spark plugs, and everything else. It's been pretty good. So as you probably concluded, costs on these vehicles are probably astronomical, and gosh, why would I ever buy something like this? But honestly, it hasn't been that bad. I mean, yes, the B7 I bought for $1,000, and I put about $9,000. That's about $10,000 into that. And then the Allroad here, I've put in, let's say, $15,000 in the purchase price, and then about $3,000 worth of maintenance there, so that's 18, and that's 10, we'll say. So that's about $28,000 I have invested in these vehicles. Now that's not that terrible. That's basically almost, not even the price of a new car. What am I saying? It's 2024. Cars are at least $40,000, especially even for a Civic. So not even remotely close. But yes, are they depreciating assets and cars are, going down in value? Yes, that is true, and I wouldn't expect anything else. But nonetheless, though, the overall cost of ownership of these vehicles hasn't been terrible, especially because I'm able to read, like most of us, and turn a wrench. So that will definitely save you some money, especially if you can do that too, and you're thinking about owning either one of these vehicles or both. You can definitely do that. A lot of you are probably wondering, well, which one do I like more? And that is, well, a very tough question for me to answer, because I'll be honest, I like them both equally. They both serve a purpose in my life. Now this one, the B7, is, yes, more of a weekender car. I just drive it on the weekends and kind of tinker with it as I go along. And obviously this vehicle being quite old, it doesn't have a lot of those modern amenities that the Allroad has. It doesn't have, push button start, keyless, entry, that sort of thing. I mean, it has the button on the fob, but it doesn't have a lot of the technology, and it has that sort of older style interior, which I quite like, and it reminds me of a simpler time. So I'm kind of hooked on this vehicle for that reason. And yes, the Allroad is a dependable daily driver. I mean, well, dependable being that it's, never really given me any grief, and that it is a newer vehicle. It's a good highway cruiser. I mean, they're both good highway cruisers. What am I saying? But this one in particular, yes, it's a very good sort of modern day daily driver, and I like it for that reason alone. It does get me to work, and it does save me a little bit on gas, although it's not perfect in every way and sense that the B7 also has its flaws. I can't really complain about this car either. I mean, I kind of like this vehicle, and that they both have a purpose, and this one does too. Now, the Allroad is filled with more technology and probably going to age better than the B7, but I do think that although the technology is great in this vehicle, I look at it as when's that going to break sort of scenario, and when do I have to fix it? But it is nice having, the push button start and the power lift gate. I mean, it doesn't really matter all that much, but it's just those nice little extras that the newer car has, which is really great and makes it a great daily commuter. It makes it very comfortable. The point of me making this video was to kind of point out that owning these kinds of vehicles are not absolute nightmares. Yes, I know this one's been relatively expensive to bring back from the dead, but that's because of my own doing. And that this one, yes, although some preventative maintenance, may cost a little bit, and especially if I've done it myself, it's worth doing to keep it going and problem-free. But regardless, I think owning these vehicles has been nothing but a great experience so far, and I'd definitely do it all over again if I could. And to choose which one I like more is really difficult, because they both have two pieces of my heart put together into make one. I know that sounds kind of silly and corny, but it's true. It honestly is. Both these vehicles I like just as equally, and to choose one is going to be almost impossible at times, especially now because I have to drive them both home and I don't know which one I'm going to take. So on that note, I just want to say thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope it kind of gave you a little bit of insight as to what it's like to own these two vehicles and how much fun it can truly be if you do a little bit of love and also have passion for a vehicle. And if you do want to watch the independent reviews on these vehicles, they will be on the channel, of course. And if you do like what you saw here today, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, and also consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. And also be sure to check out my other car reviews and videos, including projects and DIYs on my channel. And until next time, take care. Bye now.